Live, local. This is Fox 12 Now.
Hello, everyone. This is Fox 12 Now. I'm Greg Nibbler. Thank you very much for joining us. We are live streaming here out of the Fox 12 Oregon newsroom, and we start about 1 o'clock and we go throughout the afternoon, and we cover a wide range of topics here on the show, and we get to have longer form discussions. So thanks for being a part of that, whether you're watching live or after the fact. Right now, though, we're going to be talking about the Oregon coast. We're going to be talking about brown pelicans on the Oregon coast and some recent brown pelicans who needed some rehabilitation, and they actually got that, and that was at the Wildlife Center of the North Coast. We are joined now by Kari Henningsgaard from that center. And Kari, thank you very much for being here with us today to talk about this. You know, I think it's really, I love learning about wildlife anywhere, but especially there out on the coast. And I feel like for a lot of people, we go out there and appreciate it, but sometimes we're not all very knowledgeable about what's going on out there, and that includes when it comes to brown pelicans. So we're going to get into that, but I thought, if you don't mind starting off, could you tell us just about your organization and what you all do?
Absolutely. So the Wildlife Center of the North Coast is a nonprofit wildlife rehabilitation and conservation education center. So we're here on the north coast of Oregon, and we provide medical care to sick, injured, and orphaned wildlife. And we also provide conservation education programs in our community. Our mission is promoting compassion, empathy, and respect for all life through wildlife rehabilitation, ecological teachings, and wildlife conservation.
I would imagine that keeps you very busy.
Yes, fun though.
That is a lot right there. Well, and with all of those kinds of wildlife, one of the ones is brown pelicans. And there was this news that came out here recently, and I'm going to go ahead and pull up a couple of these pictures too here, just so people can see, of some brown pelicans that were having some trouble over on the Oregon coast. Could you tell us just a little bit more about brown pelicans in general and, you know, their existence here in Oregon?
Yeah, absolutely. So brown pelicans nest in the winter down in California and Mexico, and then they migrate up here in the summer months and spend the summers here on the Oregon coast roosting. I think the last number I heard was there are about 20,000 on the Oregon coast, but we have large numbers here on the North Coast post-breeding season. And I know East Sand Island in the Columbia River has historically been known as the largest off-season nighttime roost for brown pelicans on the West Coast. So
common here during those times, but there's something that was going on that caused some problems for these recent brown pelicans in general. Can you tell us that story?
Yeah, absolutely. So the brown pelicans down in California left their nesting site a little too soon. We think probably a combination of an algae bloom and domoic acid poisoning. And so they left the roost site, and they struggled to find food on the way up. And so we saw many, and I'm sure people saw the reports of brown pelicans stranding all along the Oregon coast on their way up, cold and hungry, and just needed a little bit of help. So we were happy to help the ones here on the North Coast that we could.
Yeah, so left a little too early because of those factors, didn't find enough food, and yeah, needing help. And I want to hear later on, we're going to talk about that too, of just what people can do if they see that. But let's talk about what you do. I mean, so you get this report, these pelicans are having trouble, stranded, looking hungry, and then what do you do from there?
So what we do from there is we try to get them to our facility as fast as possible. So we call our amazing team of volunteer rescue drivers, or the public that found the bird, and get them to our facility. When they come in, emaciated and hypothermic like that, we first have to stabilize their body temperature because they can't regulate it on their own. So we do that, and afterwards we can start providing with fluid therapy and nutritional tubings to treat the emaciation, and slowly transition them back to eating fish, which is their natural diet. And once they're eating on their own and they can hold a normal body temperature, we'll move them outside to our large flight enclosure with pools where they can start building up their flight muscles again. So it takes about several weeks of good nutrition and exercise, but after that, they're ready to return to the wild again.
Wow, and so you were able to get these ones in there. Were there any issues outside of that or anything, extenuating circumstances?
Yeah, absolutely. So all of the pelicans that came in, all but one were fledglings. We admitted 8, now 9. One of them had a pretty severe toe injury, so we reached out to some colleagues and after consulting with different veterinarians, decided to do an amputation on that pelican's toe. That was the recommended procedure. And so it, as you can see in that photo, is sporting a nice little boot to help heal its toe amputation. But aside from that one, the other ones just really needed some nutrition and to get their body temperature back up again.
And again, that's all that hard work that you're doing there to make sure that that happens. Well, for people who are out there on the coast, you know, and sometimes when you encounter animals that could be in trouble. So what should people do if they're out on the Oregon coast and they encounter, say, a bird, a pelican, who looks like it's having trouble? What are the signs to look for, and what do you do once you recognize some of those signs that it's having a hard time?
Yeah, absolutely. So if you are out recreating and you find any wild animal that needs help, specifically birds and pelicans in this case, you should call the nearest wildlife rehabilitator. And always leave a message if you don't reach someone the first try, because we are very busy this time of year. It's not unusual for severely debilitated pelicans and cormorants to approach humans, not because they like us, but because they're very sick. So if that happens, you know the bird needs help.
Gotcha. So if it's approaching you, that's not a good thing.
That's not a good sign, no. So please do not offer them food. Don't try to interact with them, take selfies with them. Just leave them alone and call a wildlife rehabilitator so they can help assess the situation and figure out what the best course of action is.
All right, good to know. Yeah, so for everybody out there, that's not a good sign if that bird's coming up to you. So call a rehabilitation center, let them know where you're at, and let them know what's going on.
And in general, seabirds should not be on the beach. So even, some of the smaller ones like murres, if you see them on the beach, that's another good indication that they need help. They really spend most of their time out on the ocean or at their nest site. So other than, I would say, gulls, if you see a seabird just kind of sitting on the beach, that's not a good sign either. And it's always important to keep your pets on a leash in that instance as well, because, you don't want to cause any additional harm to an animal that's already kind of struggling.
Yeah, well, great advice. So call the rehabilitation center, get some help from there, and then for you rehabilitating these brown pelicans, it sounds like this was a success story because we do have some video evidence of that. And
yes.
So tell us about this. So you go through this rehabilitation process, you get them back to where they're healthy, they can fly again. Then how do you release them back into the wild?
Well, it's different for every species. Typically, we do release every patient exactly where it was found. In this instance, because we had so many of them and they were rescued at various points along the Oregon coast during presumably a migration event, it didn't make sense to kind of release them individually along the coast again. And so in this instance, we worked with our regional district biologist, Oregon Department of Fish and Wildlife, who chose a location to release them out on the Columbia River. And we did that this morning. So we've got
so this was just
7
this morning.
of them. That was this morning, yeah. So we released 7 of them back out into the estuary there, and they took off flying really well. So it was definitely a success story. And it didn't take them long to leave us, so
they were ready to go.
Yes, they were
ready to get back out there. I mean, how does it feel, going through that and helping, these brown pelicans get through that? These ones in particular, but just in general, helping an animal and then seeing it get back into the wild and take off.
Yeah,
like
it's super rewarding, especially when we're talking about California brown pelicans here on the Oregon coast. They are listed as an Oregon Conservation Strategy species. And so when you think about 7 of them that wouldn't have otherwise made it, being able to return those back into their breeding populations is super rewarding not just for the individual pelican, but what it means for the pelican population as a whole, but certainly for the individual pelican as well. It's just, you know, a lot of hard work goes into the whole process, and it's messy, and yeah, so we try, you know, we work really hard to rehabilitate these animals, and so when we can see them fly off like that, it's kind of just the icing on the cake.
Well, you mentioned volunteers, and I'm sure it's a lot of hard work, and it's not a free experience to be able to do that. That things cost money when it comes to rehabilitating animals like that. So for your organization, you know, how do people support you, and how can they support you?
That's a great question. And thank you so much for asking that. Yeah. In Oregon, wildlife rehabilitation centers don't receive any state funding. We also don't receive any federal funding. So all of us are nonprofits, and we rely on generosity from the public, donations, to keep our work going. But with that funding limitation, of course, comes a need for volunteers as well, because we can't always staff at the level that we need. And so volunteers play a crucial role in wildlife rehabilitation, both working on site, helping, you know, with animal care, daily cage cleaning and diet prepping,
Right.
but also to help get animals to our facility, driving, actually going out to these places where people are reporting injured wildlife, and safely containing them and bringing them here, is also a huge need.
Wow. So lots of ways there that people can help out, and if they want to find out more information and, you know, find out more about what it takes to be somebody who transports wildlife like that, or whatever it is that you need, what's the best place for them to go to get that information?
Well, you can visit our website. It's www.coastwildlife.org, O-R-G, and we have all the information on how you can donate, how you can volunteer. Uh, and so, yeah, that's my recommendation for the best place.
Perfect. Well, Kari, thank you very much, you know, for joining us here today too, and just to talk
you.
about this, and also, you know, congratulations on this successful story here from just this morning of these pelicans getting back out there, and just all the work that you do there too with all of the other animals, and just helping out there on the Oregon coast. It's greatly appreciated. So thanks for doing that. Thanks for having time to talk to us as well.
Absolutely. Thanks for talking with me.
You bet. And for everybody watching live, thanks for doing so. We're going to take a break. This is something that we get to do here, though, for Fox 12 Now. We get to have these longer form conversations, just get to dig a little deeper. Like, we get to have Kari's time and finding out a little bit more about how that all works, and some of the great work that's going on over there. And if you have an idea for a segment, feel free to send me an email, fox12now@kptv.com. But we are going to take a break. We're back here throughout the afternoon. We'll have updates on if there's breaking news. I believe we're going to be talking about Oregon State baseball as well. So I told you it's a wide range of topics. That's what we do for this show. But we're taking a break right now. I'll talk to you soon. I'm Greg Nibbler. This is Fox 12 Now.